Okay, so next up is select an account list and add a new account to the list. So ask the user to identify all the relevant information for the account and use it to create an account or two-factor authentication object or account object, and then pass that into the account list add method, which we already have. Using input validation library, which we already have. So this looks pretty straightforward. So one thing that this doesn't really cover is what to do if they enter information for an account that already exists. And the right thing to do there is to reuse the existing account object rather than actually create a new account. So you really only want one object for each instructor, and you want to reuse that. So what we're going to do is we already have a list of all the instructors. So there's an account list for all the instructors here, and we have a property to hold that, which we're not currently using. So first thing we want to do is after we make this all list, let's also set course instructors UI dot under all instructors is going to be equal to all. And then we're going to make sure that every time we make a new instructor object, we're also going to add it to this list so that we have a list of all the instructors. And so far we don't have any code other than here that creates a new instructor. And in this code, we're making sure that we loop through all of our instructors and add them all to our all list. So we should be good. So let's go ahead and add an item. So we have add A for add a new instructor list. So let's make n make a new instructor and add them to a list. And then here we're going to add a choice for n. And then if we do get an n, we're going to, let's call new instructor. Okay, and then we're going to start with print list because that includes the code for picking a list that we're going to add the instructor to. So this is going to be new instructor. Okay, and then, so this is picking the list that we want to add the person to. And then what we want to do instead of printing it is let's go ahead and make or add a new instructor. So say instructor equals make or add instructor. Should be make or find. And then if instructor, then il.add instructor. So we'll make sure that, so make or find instructor will do one of three things. Either it'll make a brand new instructor object with information the user supplies, or it will find an existing object that matches the information that the user's entered, or the user will tell it to abort basically, and it will just return none. So, or Boolean false. Yeah, let's make it none. So if instructor is not none, then we'll add the instructor. Okay, so then for make or find instructor, so what we want is the easiest and most reliable way of identifying an existing instructor. So the ID is not a good choice for this because I don't know all the IDs off the top of my head, and looking up an ID is actually a significant pain. And so I'm not going to use that. And I'm also not going to use anything that involves a middle initial because I don't want to look that up either. But last name, first name, I'm definitely in good shape for that. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the user enter the last name and first name. Then I'm going to search through the list of instructors and see if I already have one that matches the last name and first name. And if I do, I'm going to say there's already an instructor, blah. Do you want to use the existing instructor? And if they say yes, I'll return that. And if they say no, I'm going to, well, if they say no and there's already one, I'm going to return none. And then we're not going to add anybody to anything. And then if it isn't in the list, then I go ahead and I create a new instructor object and I return that. So that seems pretty straightforward. I'll have to gather additional information. So what I need for an instructor object is first name, last name, middle initial, and G number. But to find instructor, I just want first name and last name. So let's go here and we'll get first name is equal to input string. What is the instructor's first name? And then the default is non-empty string, so that's what I'm going to use. And then we'll do last name is and then what we want to do is have a method on instructor list that will search for a match. So we're going to call instructor equals, and then we want our course instructors UI all instructors list dot search, and we'll put in first name comma last name. So I'm going to have to implement that method. And then we'll say if instructor is not none. So instructor was not none. So we're going to say continue. Well, so we want to edit is equal to y or n. y/n question mark. Okay. So that's going to return true or false. So if not, yeah, let's do it. If add it, then we're going to do some stuff. Else, we're going to return none, and we're going to skip the rest of what's happening in new instructor. Okay, so if they want to add it, then we need to get the And then new instructor will actually add them to the right list. Um, if they said, no, don't add it, then we're going to return none. And then, so that handles the case where there's already an existing instructor. Else, here's the case if there isn't. So we already have first name, last name. We're going to get G number is input string. What is the instructor's G number? And then I could actually specify a filter that's only going to return true if they type in a valid G number. So let's do that. So we'll say valid equals valid G number. And then I have to write that function. So that's going to get the G number. And then last thing I need is middle initial. Actually, let's do middle initial here. So middle initial can be empty. So we basically want to accept anything here. So for valid, let's go ahead and use lambda sub x true. So there's a function that always returns true. And then for valid G number, let's go ahead and I actually sort of think that's logic, and so it doesn't really belong in the UI. Let's go ahead and put it in instructor as a static method so that we can use it from anywhere. So let's go ahead and add a static method valid G number, and then it's got number. So first thing is number sub 0 has to be equal to G, or yeah, no, it's got to be capital G. Okay, so if, let's do it the other way. So if number 0 not equal G, then return false, not valid. Else, for I in range first character up through, actually, so there should be an 8-digit number after the G. So if the len of number is not equal 9, then return false. And then otherwise, for I in range 1 to len of number, if number sub I is, let's say, less than the character 0, or number sub I is greater than the character 9, then that's not a number, so we're going to return false. And then if we got through all those checks, it should be valid, so we'll return true. And then I need a new line here at the end. Okay, so there's my valid G number. And then if I want to use that here, that's going to be now in course, actually that's going to be instructor dot valid G number. Okay, So if I got here, I should have first name, last name, middle initial. So instructor is equal to instructor. And then first name, last name, middle initial, G number. And then we'll return instructor. All right. So that seems to be all the cases. And then here, if we got an instructor, we add it to the list. Otherwise, we don't. So a fair number of cases to test here. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. And I didn't actually want to run that under the debugger, so let me start again. All right. So let's go ahead and add a new instructor. Please select an item from the list. Actually, I want a custom prompt there. No, we'll do fine. So let's add somebody to CIS 133Y. And then instructor's first name is Po Chin. Last name is Chang. Okay, so I got an error. Oh, I need to implement my search method in all instructors. Instructor list, rather. Okay, so we're going to define a search method, and I'm going to put it above my getters. So we'll define search, and it's going to take a first name and a last name. And then it's going to go for instructor in self.under instructors if instructor dot yeah, so I actually want to use a getter here. Get first name equals first name, and instructor dot get last name equal last name, then return instructor. And if we got all the way to the end here without matching any of them, then we return none. So for getters, I want to have that's a method. These are methods in instructor. So let's go ahead and add get first name is going to just return self.under first name. Get last name is going to return self.under last name. So I'm only adding getters and setters when I actually need them, and that's keeping the interface as minimal as possible, which gives me the maximum freedom as a developer to change things. So let's go ahead and try running it again. So we're going to make a new instructor for CIS 133Y, and then Po Chin Chang. Already an instructor with that name. Do you want to add them to the list? Let's say yes. So now let's print the contents of an instructor list for CIS 133Y. Should have 3 people on it now. And it does. So Mark, Greg, and now Po Chin has been added. So let's go ahead and add a new instructor to 133Y, and then let's do Stephanie Allen, and then there is not already an instructor in my all instructors list, so it's asking me for a middle initial. Let's do A, and then 1, 2. So here's an invalid number. So let's try actually X. Okay, and then let's try G. So that's invalid. And then that one should be valid. Actually, does that have 8? No. 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be valid. And it is. Okay. So print the contents of instructor list for 133Y. And I have no way of looking at the G number right now, so I'll have to actually add that to this display. Actually, let's go ahead and change the string method to include that information. So we're going to do instructor here. We'll do self dot under G number. And we'll do that for both of the methods. Okay, so let's try stop and rerun, stop and rerun. All right, so let's print the contents of CIS 133Y. And we tried the two cases where we added an existing instructor and also added a new instructor. So let's try the case where we abort. So I'm going to type skip there, and it skips the rest of it. So let's make a new instructor, and we'll pick one. And then we'll go ahead and... there's no way of getting out of it now. I just have to continue here. Okay, and then we'll print... Okay, and then we'll make a new instructor, specify an existing instructor. So here's a case that I'm not dealing with when they want to add somebody who's already in the list. So let me pick the list, and then I'm going to go ahead and add... There's already instructor with that name. Do I want to add it to the list? Let's say no. So let's print the list. Okay. Okay, and then new. This time I will add the thing to the list. Yes, I want to add it to the list. And then print the contents of the list. So I want to avoid the case where I'm adding somebody to a list that is already there. So I'm going to check for that and only add it if they're not already in the list. So in course instructors, so this is finding the list. This is calling the add method. Actually, in the add method, I want to prevent them from adding an instructor who's already there. So instructor list add. Instead of just calling append, I want to say, there's a way of finding the thing in the list, and I think it's the, in Python, position of item in list. I'm just going to use in. Yeah, so if instructor not in self dot instructors. Actually, I need to have a method for this. Either that or instructors needs to return its list of instructors. So, actually, what I want to do is I want to implement in here for my instructor list. Oh, actually, no, I'm already in instructor list. Never mind. So if instructor, actually, this would be a good thing to do. So append is just gonna append, but I want instructor list to support contains as well. So when you say like instructor in instructor list, that in is actually the under contains operation. So we're going to define contains, and it takes self and also an item, and then this needs to return true if this item is already in my collection and false otherwise. So what I do here is I return item in self.under instructors. So the instructor is in the instructor list if the instructor is in this list of instructors. And now I can go ahead and say if instructor is not none. So I have the instructor. If instructor is not none and instructor not in IL, and this should work now, then we're going to add instructor. So let's try it. Try it again. Okay, so new instructor. And first we'll start with 133Y, and we'll add Po Chin, Chang, who's not already in there. So yes, we want to add them to the list, and then we'll print 133Y, and that still works. So let's go ahead and add another one, 133Y, Mark Goodman. Yes, we'll add it to the list, but it's already on the list, so if I print 133Y, I should only be on there once. And I am. Okay. And then we'll try one more time. We'll add 133Y, Mark Goodman, and no, we don't want to add them to the list. And that should work. Okay, so that seems to work. So I did forget to do one thing though, which is when I'm making this instructor here, I want to make a part-time instructor object for part-timers and a full-time instructor object for full-timers. Now you'll notice in the case where they specified an instructor that already exists, I'm finding the instructor that I already created, and it's already going to be either a part-timer or a full-timer. That's completely transparent to me here. But here, I need to ask them whether it's a part-timer or not. I could give them a list and ask them to choose whether they want part-timer or full-timer. I'm just going to ask a yes or no question because there's only two different kinds of instructors. So if Y or N is the instructor a full-time instructor? Actually, is this a full-time instructor? Y/N. So if yes, then this else return that. Okay. So let me try that one more time. All right. So we're gonna make a new instructor, add them to CIS 133Y. Instructor's first name is Juan Maldonado. Don't know a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then yes. And then let's add another new instructor, 133Y. First name, Stephanie Allen A. And this is not a full-time instructor. So then print the list, and they're both on it. And unfortunately, I don't have an easy way of telling whether they're full-time or part-time right now, but that looks okay.